Hello my friends, in today's beginner-friendly tutorial, I'll be taking you through a color theory exercise that is going to change your artwork forever. I'm betting you already know your complementary colors. But do you know how to actually use them to make amazing art? To start off, we'll have some fun drawing these stinky fish, and then jump into a color study that gives you a ton of hands-on practice actually using color theory. Okay, so the only thing you'll need for this project is this template I've made for you. You can grab it for free using the link below, or better yet, you can scan this QR code to download it directly to your iPad. All you have to do is find the camera on your iPad. From here, you're going to point it at the code and wait for the yellow link to appear before tapping on it. The next thing you're going to see is a blue download button. But please ignore your screen after tapping on it. You're actually looking for this little circle with the arrow pointing down, and there you're going to see the file. It's called Sardine's Color Theory, and you're just going to tap on it. In Procreate, it's going to look like this in your gallery, and if you don't see it right away, make sure you exit all of your stacks. From here, we're going to tap on the project, and we're going to just take a look at our layers. I've already set up the layers to make this project a little bit easier. So here's my group, and I'm going to use this arrow to open it up, and we're going to be drawing our fish on the fish layer. So I'm going to zoom in on this can of sardines, and for the brush, I'm going to be going to the classic library, the old brushes, and inking on the left, and I'm going to use my studio pen here. And I have some stabilization turned on for my brush. So if I go to stabilization here, this is making my brush a little bit smoother. So if you want to pause the video here and match your settings, you can do that. Some people don't like stabilization. It's kind of a personal choice, I would say. And then for the size, we're going to set our brush size to 4%. So the sardines are very long and narrow. So we're going to draw an arc that looks like this. And I'm going to hold my pen down to get the shape tool, and I'm going to use the edit shape tool to kind of make these sorts of adjustments. So don't make it too far up. You want to really keep this arc really gentle like this. And then we're going to do a matching one on the bottom, and you can see I'm kind of leaving out the front and the back. So that looks pretty good. So for the head of my sardine here, I'm going to draw a shape that kind of comes down like this. And then for the front lip, I'm just going to do kind of a similar looking shape that meets up with it. So that's my sardine mouth. And then for the tail, I'm going to draw a line that goes out from where I ended. So I think that's a nice symmetrical shape. And then from there, I'm going to round the tip and push my tail inwards like this. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I think that's a pretty good tail. And then for the head, let's go back to the head. I'm going to do a rounded shape like this. And as much as possible, I like to use the shape tools. Okay, great. So the eyes are really important to characters. So once you've got your circle, you're going to hold your pen down, and the edit shape tool is so helpful here because I can move my eye around, and it's much easier for me to find that perfect spot, and you'll kind of know it when you see it. And I'm going to make sure it's a perfect circle, not an ellipse. So there's some other options here that will really help you. And then I'm going to do an inner eyeball as well. And then I think for me, I'm going to just color this eye in. Maybe I'll add a little reflection here. Okay, so I feel like my fish needs some fins. So I'm going to draw a fin here. This is the longest fin. It kind of goes out like this, and then maybe has a more of like a straight line on the back for this fin. And then it has like a miniature version of that on the bottom. So this one I just kind of make with like 2 straight lines. We also want to kind of think about the way we're going to color our fish. So I definitely want to make my tail a different color than the rest of the body. So I'm going to add a little triangle here separating it. I want the bottom of the fish to be a slightly darker color than the bottom. So I'm going to kind of separate it with a rounded line like this so I can color this part separately. And as you're drawing, you also want to make sure that there are no gaps in your lines because that's going to make coloring in a real nightmare. So just fix that up as you're working on your fish. And then we're gonna add a fin here. So I'm gonna kind of set the shape of it with an arc. And then from there, I'm gonna kind of draw around that initial shape. It's gonna kind of go over things. Also, that one just turned out way too big. So I'm gonna just size this down. I could also put this on a separate layer, and that way I can move it around, but I think that looks pretty good. And then I'm gonna take my eraser, and I'm using airbrushing and the hard airbrush. You can set it to whatever size you want. I'm using 3%, and then I'm just gonna clean this up. Okay, it's looking good. I'm just gonna add a few lines here and there. So I'm gonna add some lines like this. Same with the tail. These are just like some ideas of texture. And then the last thing I'm gonna add are some little scales. And I just want to suggest the scales. I'm not going to draw every single scale on this fish. Not only would that be kind of boring for me, but it would really overcomplicate my illustration. I don't want to have lines super tight to each other. So what we do a lot of time is we just suggest the pattern. And that usually actually does an amazing job of creating the result that we want without all the clutter. Okay, wonderful. So I'm happy with my fish. If you want to pause here and take a little bit more time with it, you can. And then we'll put our illustration together and then start the color theory. Okay, so I have my fish here on this layer, and I'm going to switch to my arrow and make sure I'm on uniform. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller because I want to be able to fit two fish kind of flipped, like mirror images of each other. So I'm going to place this one near the top, and then I'm going to make a copy. So I'm going to duplicate the layer like that, and then use my arrow to separate them. And I can use the flip horizontal button here. So it looks a little tight, but I think I can make them fit. Maybe they'll have like this interesting kind of overlap. Okay, so let's get into the color theory. But before we do that, we're going to make a bunch of copies and put it into each one of the types of color theory. And we're going to squish all three of these layers together. So I'm just going to highlight them in blue so you can see which ones. So it's the tin and all my fish. So I'm going to squish them like that. And then I'm going to close this group. And I'm going to swipe left and duplicate this group. And then I can use my arrow and move it over. And if you really want the boxes to line up with the edges, turn on snapping. That is very helpful. So now when I get it to the corner, it's going to kind of line itself up. Makes it a little bit easier. So if you're a perfectionist, you might like that option, or you can just eyeball it. It's not a really big deal. So I'm going to put one in each square. And just make sure they're all the same size. Sometimes when you're moving things, things change size, so just go back if that happens. Okay, so I have a design in each square, and then now we have a little problem though. Now we don't know which tin corresponds with which part, and this can be a really big problem. So we're gonna start with monochromatic, and we're just gonna toggle the group on and off, and I can see that that's the correct one. So you can just go through all of your layers and figure out which one is monochromatic. So for me, luckily it's this top one. I got it on my first try. And then I'm going to open this group up, and I can go to this layer labeled tin, and we can start coloring. So we want to make sure we're coloring in the correct way on Procreate. And the correct way is not to mix your colors and your outlines together. That really limits what you can do. So instead, we're going to tap on the layer, and we're going to use an option called reference. It's right here. And I'll explain how this works a little bit better. So we're going to go to our background layer, and we're going to start a new layer right on top here. Now, normally if you had a blank layer like this and you tried to color stuff on it, it would obviously spill out everywhere. I'm just doing this as an example. You don't have to follow along. But because we have reference turned on, no matter what layer we're working on, it's going to look at this reference layer for color drop. So this is very, very helpful for keeping your colors and your outlines separate. Okay, great. So before we jump into coloring anything, let's figure out our color palette. So the first one is monochromatic. It means one. So we're going to pick one color and kind of go with it. I already have this red color. I'm going to stick with that. The color that you want to pick is vibrant though. So stay in this quadrant of the color wheel, but you can pick any hue on the outside. But as long as it's vibrant, that's the important part. And then I'm going to make my brush really big, and I'm just going to draw like a little circle here. So that's going to be my first color. So the first three colors are going to be your most vibrant colors. So the most vibrant colors are the ones with lots of saturation. So they're on this side of the color wheel. So I want to pick a dark version. So I'm going to pick this very colorful. So it's very vibrant, but it's dark. Maybe a little bit too dark. And then I'm also going to pick a pastel version of this color. So that's going to end up being like a proper pink color. These three colors represent my most vibrant options, and I want to save these colors for the most important parts of my illustration. So think about the story or the message that you're trying to send. In my mind, the word sardines is pretty important and the fish themselves are pretty important. So I'm probably going to save those colors for those parts. Okay, but we can't just use vibrant colors, and this certainly was a mistake that I made as an early artist. So now we're going to pick out some more muted colors. Those ones exist in this gray section here. So let's pick out 4 colors that we can use. So I maybe might grab one here. I'm going to go from kind of lightest to darkest, and I'm going to kind of zigzag. So maybe I'll pick like a more proper gray. So this one's going to look like a proper gray. Actually, not even quite. It still has quite a bit of color in it. Maybe someone from here. And as an artist, you'll start to, as you mature as an artist, you'll really start to appreciate this section of your color wheel. There's some really nice tones and shades of your favorite colors. So I'm going to pick my most vibrant color, and I really liked how that worked there. But I already have a problem that's perfect for illustrating something really important here. So you can see I didn't mean to color in the bottom of my fish. So just bear with me, I just want to show you something really important when coloring. So if I drop in my color and I don't take my pen off the page, there is this number called threshold here. And when you're coloring on Procreate, you really want to be aware of it. So my number is too high. So to fix that, I haven't removed my pen from my page this whole time. I'm going to start shifting it to the left. And you can see I went from spilling over to having more control over my brush. So if the number is too high, the color will spill out. You never want to set your threshold to 100%. But the opposite problem can happen. So if your threshold is too low, 0%, you can see it doesn't color in all the way. So if you've ever had that issue where you're seeing those white gaps, that's why. So there's no perfect number for threshold. I usually try and keep it in around like the 70, 80s, but you can kind of control it based on what's going on for you. Okay, so I feel like that part of my fish is really important. So I'm gonna color it in, and then maybe like the head can be this really nice pink color. So we're just using our most vibrant colors for the really important parts. And then maybe I'll use this color here, but I think it's a little too dark, so maybe I'll lighten it. There we go, that's nice. So you can color this any way that you want. One really good little trick is whatever color you pick for the body, so I'm gonna pick that color again, and then I'm gonna just darken it a little bit. So I'm just moving my circle down, and I'm gonna drop it in for here, because this is the bottom of the fish, so it will give it the sense of like a natural shading. So that will always look nice if you just darken this color based off of this one. So that looks pretty good. So the reason that monochromatic color schemes work is you're guaranteed that it's going to look good together because it's part of the same family. So of course it's going to look good together. The downside of this is you're pretty limited for the colors that you can use. You're stuck with one hue, and then you have lots of shades. So I like to save my most gray color for this little handle here. The rest of the tin, we want to lean on our muted tones because those are going to help our vibrant tones really stick out. So we want to think of the muted tones as supporting characters. So we're helping support the vibrancy of this main part. And don't forget to color in these little parts here. There's lots of them. And then just like I did with my fish, whatever color I used for here, I'm going to want to use a darker version on the bottom. So it looks kind of like it's part of the same thing. So it's kind of the same, but darker. Okay, so if you need more time with finishing your monochromatic, then pause the video here. So what a lot of people neglect when they're thinking about their illustrations is the background. the background is an important part of your color theory. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the reference. You want to turn off reference immediately after you're done coloring in whatever on that layer. It will cause problems with things that you're doing later on. The background would have been a great example of that actually, but we're going to make sure it's turned off before we go to background. And then we're going to pick another muted tone. So you kind of want to go with a good way to think about it, a good recipe. You can definitely break these rules, but a good recipe is to either make it really light or really dark. So I'm going to try both. The light, actually, I really like that. And then I can try like a darker muted tone. So like a dark grayish version like that. And see, that kind of clashes with the colors that I had. So I'm going to go back. I think that first version was good. So that's my monochromatic done. And then let's jump into complementary. And I'll give you a couple more tips about how to do coloring efficiently. So for complementary, let's first find complementary. So I got lucky on the first try. So it's my second one, and I'm going to open this one up. We're going to repeat the steps. So we're going to turn on reference for the tin. And then we're going to go to background layer and start a new layer there. So for this next one, you don't have to pick the same color. You can pick whatever color you want, but again, try and pick it from this section because that's going to be a really nice, vibrant, saturated color. So I'm going to draw that as my first one. And just like we did before, we're going to pick out a darker version that's vibrant and then a lighter, more pastel version that's vibrant. And we're going to save this for the most important parts of our illustration. Okay, wonderful. So a lot of you guys already know what complementary is. It's just whatever color is on the opposite side of your color wheel. Procreate has a great feature called Harmony to kind of simplify this. So we're going to go here and there's a drop down and there's all the color theories and we're going to pick complementary. And this is my color, my main color, and then this one is going to be my complementary color. So I'm going to pick on that and then I'm going to switch back to the disc. And just like we did before, we're only going to pick muted tones of our complementary color. So I'm going to stick around here in this gray section here, maybe even a little bit more gray. So you can pick like 4 or 5 colors, whatever you want, just so you kind of get the idea of where we're going with this. So just like before, your most vibrant colors are just for the important parts, and these are your supporting actors. So another thing that you want to keep in mind, but this is going to kind of happen naturally, 20% of your drawing should have your main color, and 80% of your drawing should have your supplementary color, because we really want to save the main color for the things that really stand out. Okay, so now you know what to do. So I'm going to start with my most vibrant color, and I'm going to start coloring stuff in. And then this is the other trick I wanted to show you. There's this button called Continue Filling. When I tap on it, I can just tap where I want the color to go. This will greatly speed up your coloring in Procreate. So if you don't know about that, definitely utilize it for this project. And then we're going to go ahead and start coloring our illustration here. And the color theories are really just like little recipes. So, or formulas is another good way to think about it. And when you're just learning about color theory, you want to stick to the formula. You want to stick to the recipe. But once you master it, that's when it's really interesting to start to break the rules. And you'll see this with a lot of very renowned artists, is they just know how to break the rules in a really cool way that still works. But the first step is always mastering the basics. So I have my primary color and I've used it here. And then just like before, I'm going to use these muted tones to illustrate the rest of my tin. Okay, wonderful. So if you're done with your complementary colors, let's turn off reference, and then the last thing we're going to do is the background. So again, you kind of want to stick with either a muted dark version or a muted light version. Okay, wonderful. So now we're ready for triadic. So I'm going to toggle through and find triadic, and then same idea. You're going to put reference on for the outline. Reference always goes on the layer with your outlines, and then a new layer on top of background. And then you can pick whatever color you want as your starting point. And I'm going to make sure it's a vibrant version of the color. So for me, it's going to be this orange color here. And then let's not draw the other shapes because I think you have a good idea of how that works. Let's jump right into finding the triadic complements. So we're going to go to harmony and we're going to switch to triadic. And obviously triadic has 3, and triadic is a perfect triangle on your color wheel. So here are my other 2 options. So I'm going to do those in the same vibrant tones. Okay, wonderful. And then we're going to go back to the disc and we're going to take each of the vibrant tones and let's find like 1 or 2 muted versions. So I kind of like this like golder, I don't know if that's the right way of saying that. I'm going to pick like that color there and maybe something with a little bit of gray. So just kind of trust your instincts, whatever you think looks good. And for each one, I'm going to pick 2 muted tones. But you guys have a good sense of this now. So obviously there's so many more options. And then I'm going to start kind of coloring in just with vibrant tones. So I don't actually like this color very much. I'm going to make it a darker version, and I think this is going to be my sardines. So for this one, you definitely have to be very comfortable switching out the colors if you're not happy with them. So for example, once you get a little further in the process, if something's just not working, then try something different because it's not worth sticking with a color that you're just not happy with. So now we're ready for the muted tones. So of course, I'm going to just color in the background here and make sure I get all these little bits and bobs. So if you're done with your can of sardines, of course, we're going to turn off reference, and then the last thing we're going to do is just adjust the background color. So I don't have a lot of purple represented here, so I think I'm going to stick with kind of a grayish purple. Wonderful. So the last one we're going to do is mother color, and this is not a traditional color theory. You're not going to find this in art textbooks. This is more something that came up with the internet and a color theory that I think has a lot of potential. So just like before, I'm going to reference my tin layer and then make a new layer. And this time we're not going to create a color palette. We're just going to jump into coloring. So you kind of want to keep the same thought process. So for example, I love the color lime. So I'm going to use like a very vibrant lime for the sardines. So you still want to use vibrant colors for the important things and dull colors for the rest of it, but you can kind of have a free-for-all with mother color. So I learned about mother color through social media, but it's used a lot in the painting world. And essentially when an artist is picking out their color palette for let's say like an oil painting, they will mix in a little bit of the same color into each color that they're planning to use. And what this does is it harmonizes all the colors. And we can actually do this digitally very easily. So this one may seem kind of chaotic at first. Don't worry if your colors don't exactly work together. It's very hard to get, without any sort of theory or plan, it is hard to get colors to work together. That's why so much emphasis is put on color theory. So just do your best, but don't stress out because we're going to essentially apply a filter at the end that is going to help our colors work together. Okay, great. So now I'm on to my muted tones for the background. This is maybe a little bit more vibrant than I had wanted, but it kind of looks nice. Maybe I'll use a gray color for this one. I'm on the home stretch. Okay, wonderful. So if you feel like you're done with your mother color, let's turn off reference, and then we're going to go to background color, and we're just going to update that. Okay, so I think that's good enough for me. And now we can jump into trying the mother color. And I would love to know what you guys think about this because it is kind of, not controversial, but new and exciting. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our layers, and for this one, we're going to squish these 2 layers together. So the colors with the background, it's just going to work a little bit better because of course the background is part of our color theory. And then I'm going to start a new layer on top. And this layer is going to be a clipping mask. So whatever we add to this layer is only going to show up on what's underneath. And you're going to pick a color from the vibrant section, And you can pick any color that you want. And honestly, I kind of just closed my eyes and I rotated it because it really doesn't matter. And so I got this cool pink color. I'm going to drop it over. Obviously, this is a disaster. So for the mother color, because we're trying to mix in this random color that we picked out with all the other colors below, it's very easy. We're going to go to the end and we're going to change this opacity to 20%. And essentially, every color that we picked out is now 20% mixed in with whatever color you have here. But it gets better. I actually really like that, surprisingly. If you don't love yours, what you can do is you can go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and you can toggle through and just see if there's another version that you weren't considering that might be even better. But honestly, I kind of really like that first option that I had. You can try more saturation or less, but that's just going to dull your color. So these two, probably I would stick with what we got. So that's basically the project. But at the end of the day, it's about stepping back and looking at this as a color study. So when a more professional artist is creating something for print or something that they want to add to their portfolio, they're not going to just color it one way and go with that. They're going to try a bunch of different things before they commit to adding like shading or gradients or more complicated things. And they're just going to find a color theory that they think looks really good after some trial and error. So I would love to know which color theory you love the most. For me, I think it's the mother color, but a lot of the other ones are really good contenders. So I hope you enjoyed this project, and I also hope you learned a lot from this process. Wonderful. So see you in the next great project I've got cooking.